such a pleasure. Hello, Scotland! So we're all brothers and sisters today, and thank you for coming out. It's a real pleasure to be here. So my speech won't be so long, just to say who I am, for those of you who don't know me, give you a little bit of science around the coronavirus. COVID-19 is the disease, and then a little bit to reflect on what the solutions the governments are proposing or forcing on us, and at the end, what we can try and do about it. Is that okay? So thank you. The mottos of my speeches as well have been truth and freedom. So come with me on a journey, if that's okay. So just before we start, if it's okay, maybe you would like to just take a brief second to inhale, close your eyes, and we'll reflect just for 2 seconds on why we're here. And I'm sure, like me, I'm a scientist and a mother, that we are here for the elderly who have unnecessarily died. Yep. For the elderly, if you just close your eyes, the elderly that are on their own in care homes, locked more or less in individual rooms, not able to come out for weeks. For children who have been told to be fearful of invisible things like viruses and bacteria when there's absolutely no danger. And also to reflect on the people who are wearing the masks, because we have to bring and learn to bring them with us on the journey. Because we are here because we love all those people. But they are wearing masks. They are wearing masks because they love people too. And they actually have very good qualities that we have to recognize in each and every one of them. They believe what their doctors and the teachers and the politicians and the so-called experts are saying. So when you see someone with a mask, don't be antagonistic. Don't be angry, because they actually have grown up in a world where the people that they elected spoke the truth, and they and their parents' generation went to war to fight for freedom. And they can't imagine that people who have good salaries and pensions and have been well educated and call themselves doctors and experts either know that this is nothing to be fearful of, or if they don't know, they should know. So let's just take a deep breath and come with me on a journey for truth and freedom. So just very briefly, my background, my degree is in molecular biology, molecular genetics. I have a PhD in immunology, where I was trying to find cures for brain tumors. And then I went to Munich for 2 years, and then to the Max Planck Institute in Berlin in the department of Hans Lehrer, and we were involved in the Human Genome Project. And I developed a little chip that you could put thousands of proteins on it, take a drop of blood from someone, and diagnose them with an autoimmune disease. And I went on that journey because I saw in research there was a lot of time wasted. And if you could diagnose people early, they could make lifestyle changes or get better treatment, and they wouldn't have symptoms and they could live longer. And I then started a company, and we were able to develop early diagnostic tests for autoimmune disease and cancer so that people would be healthy. So my life's work is trying to make people healthy and to not be afraid of diseases, and also to say, when I say lifestyle changes, 6 of the top causes of death can be reduced by good nutrition and having access to good food and vitamins. I was also involved in applying my technology to look at people who had recovered from meningitis in Africa. And the idea was, if you could find out the people who made antibodies to meningitis, that maybe you could find proteins that would be vaccine candidates, that those proteins could then be injected into people as vaccines, but there would be nothing, not bad things that would need to stimulate the immune response, and you could have safe vaccines. So you can have safe vaccine. But on my journey, our technology, the first thing we did was look at antibodies used in research and in diagnostics and in pathology labs. And a lot of the antibodies, we were groundbreaking and verifying those antibodies against thousands of proteins. And those antibodies were not binding what the suppliers and the diagnostic companies were saying. And when we went back to them and said, can you amend the scientific record? They weren't willing to. So that started me on a journey of 20 years of trying to get the scientific community to actually correct mistakes in research. And there was very little willingness to do that. So all through my career then I had to make a decision, either to comply and agree with things that were not right, or to try and stand up for it. And so I then started to work with the German government and the Irish government and the EU for 15 years now to try and validate medical information and research papers. And because of the challenges and the resistance that I've seen, and a lot of the time I'm told, which is definitely true now, that my career will not be enhanced because of what I'm doing. And if you go along with things, you'll be promoted, you'll be a member of a Royal Academy, you'll get to chair more task forces, you may even be president of a university. So I have to say, in the last 15 or 20 years, why we are here today is that not enough people, it's actually unbelievable within science, that not enough people are challenging it, and it goes from the governments and the funding agencies, and they know for 20 years that this is the case. So part of the learning from this is that we need to be giving 10 or 20% of research funding to validate and independently repeat the results, including from Imperial College London.
Yeah.
So the other reason why I'm here today, what started me on the journey, was that in the first week that my child went to secondary school, which would be about age 12, I came home from a trip to Brussels, and she had got an envelope with the information around the HPV vaccine in the school. And in the first week, as all you mothers and fathers and grandparents know, you're very busy. And the vaccination was going to be on the Wednesday, and she had gone to school on Monday. And there was no patient information leaflet. And I had an interest in the HPV vaccine. And so I spent most of the night researching it. Again, this was about 2013, 2014. But what I realized is that normal parents, not normal parents, but parents, in the little leaflet it said, it'll only be a little pinprick. There's nothing to worry about here. But in reality, and first of all I should say, in Ireland there are 2.2 million women, and about 300 women have cervical cancer every year. And you can get a smear test, and it is preventable. Thank you. So I'm just telling you this story because if you look at the HPV vaccine information leaflet, so the chance of getting cervical cancer is age 50, it's 1 in 10,000 people, and it's preventable if you get a smear test. If you look at the patient information leaflet that parents should be getting, in the clinical trials, 50% of the participants in the trial, 50% had new medical conditions. Yep. There were so many. So out of 20,000, 10,000 healthy people went into this cervical cancer vaccine trial. Half of them came out with a new medical condition, and 1 in 50 had a severe adverse event like multiple sclerosis, juvenile arthritis, heart issues, and some of the girls have all of these symptoms, and they give the vaccine at age 12. So they live their entire lives from age 12, 1 in 50, with severe adverse events. So you have almost 200 times more chance of having an adverse event at age 12 than having cervical cancer 40 years later. Wow. And I think if parents knew that information, they would not give that HPV vaccine. And I realize that the Department of Education and the Department of Health and your governments and your regulators and the entire research community is failing you as parents and grandparents and family members by not giving you that information. So I then had a dilemma that what could I do about it? So I actually went to visit a very renowned, I decided I would dedicate 10 years of my life at least to try and get the patient information leaflet to parents. And also I object that the schools should be giving vaccines. The parents should be there to watch their children. So in my own story then, it turns out the letter came from a vaccine unit, and it was about 2 miles up the road from where I lived. So I went there at 8:30 in the morning before work. And I said to them, where's the patient information leaflet? And I met a few nurses and they shrugged their shoulders. And I was saying that if people knew that, they wouldn't actually consent to this. And so they said nothing, and I gave them some of the research publications. And I went to work. And at about 12 o'clock I got a phone call from my school. And they said out of about, I think, 12 girls, they rang me because I'm a first responder and because I was the only parent who didn't consent, that 4 of the children had collapsed and one was unconscious. And the nurse and the doctor were heading to another school, and they asked me if I would come and bring those 4 girls around to visit their parents. And they just gave me a slip of paper to give to each of the parents to say, your daughter had an adverse reaction. Wow. But they didn't record it. So I ended up driving around those 4 girls to different parents saying that on the first vaccine, if the child collapses, that really you should consider not giving a second or third. And each of the parents more or less said, I'm not anti-vax. And they ignored it and they carried on. So then I decided, okay, this is wrong. And I also, as you know, have been involved in setting up a freedom party. And it's really about trying to establish our rights for freedom. So I suppose the values that I hold dear are truth and freedom. And I think one of the things that we have to do, you might consider that maybe every country in the world should actually, you know, what's going on here is local communities and families against global, unelected, unaccountable powers. And that really what we need to do is to have freedom parties. That really we need to challenge what's going on. So that's just my background, I suppose, why I'm here. And as you know, a lot of you have said to me today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the science. And if any of you have watched my videos or shared my videos, I'd like to thank you very much. My very first video got almost 500,000 views in 6 days, and then it was taken down from YouTube. And I do have to say I support BitChute very much, because the founder of BitChute, Ray Vaughan, is there as a last resort. And I also am very grateful to people like Dave Cullen, Computing Forever, Carol Murphy, and Rowan Clark Gran Torino. So shout out to them. And also I think we should acknowledge and I respect very much Julian Assange. And I know his hearing is coming. And maybe we should give a shout out to our friendly police over there who are there to protect us. And maybe we should say to them, it's a bit like the people with the masks, that you're actually here because you love them and you respect them, and they are going to be the front line for the vaccines. So you're actually saving them, because none of the healthcare workers or children or anyone should be not getting vaccines. They're not safety tested with randomized placebo control. So this is the little bit about the science. So some information. I won't maybe do as much on the fatality rate, but just very simply to say that coronaviruses have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. And just in the same way that carbon dioxide, they picked the wrong molecule. Carbon dioxide is not a major contributor to global